The Heritage Foundation's 2024 Index of U.S. Military Strength addresses an increasingly dangerous world. Wars rage in Syria, Gaza, Yemen, and Ukraine. In the energy-rich Middle East, Iran is a hair's breadth from becoming a nuclear power, threatening to immerse the entire Middle East in a war through their Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis proxies.
And the Iranians, we know from 40-plus years of history with them that they pay no attention to our words if they're not supported by actions. And so we've been attacked 33 times.
In Europe, Russia is producing more new military equipment today than it was before it invaded Ukraine. In Asia, Kim Jong-un keeps reminding everyone of North Korea's nuclear capabilities, including missiles that can reach the United States. Xi Jinping's China now has a 6-to-1 advantage over the U.S. Navy and ships in the Indo-Pacific. It's rapidly building modern combat aircraft and nuclear-tipped missiles, and has been aggressively clear in its intention to replace the U.S. as the most dominant power in the world.
Rather than the global diplomat, I would call them the global banker of disruption. I mean, they're the ones who are fueling Russia and Ukraine. They're the ones who are paying the Iranians for all of their oil exports.
China and Russia are increasingly able to match our military might. And if we do not act now, the consequences will be seismic.
We are in a very different strategic posture than we have ever been before, on the cusp of facing two nuclear peers.
Terrorist groups in Africa kidnap, brutalize, and murder civilians on a weekly basis. Closer to home, Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela threatens to seize oil fields from neighboring Guyana. Drug cartels continue to exploit poor or corrupted governance through Latin America to traffic people, drugs, weapons, and contraband into the United States. In December 2023 alone, over 300,000 more illegal aliens from countries all over the world entered the U.S. In the midst of this turmoil, the real question becomes, can the U.S. deal with this world? Can it protect its interests and ensure the world remains a place that favors America's prosperity, safety, and security interests? The Heritage Foundation's Index of U.S. Military Strength has reached a conclusion on this question. Not unless there's a change. For the second year running, the index has given the U.S. military an overall rating of weak.
At the beginning of this year, I submitted to the Congress a defense budget which reflects my best judgment about what we and our allies must do to protect our people in the years ahead.
30 years on from the end of the Cold War, the U.S. military is half the size. Most of its equipment was designed and purchased back then.
The clock is ticking on many of our Cold War era weapons.
And the readiness of U.S. forces for battle is a shadow of the status those forces had when they confronted the Soviets. Innovation is slow, recruitment is down. The U.S. now has the smallest and oldest military in more than 80 years. Our enemies know this, and our allies are even worse off than we are. The British would struggle to field a single division of land combat power. The Royal Navy has only 20 ships, few of which are ready for deployment. The entire British military is smaller than the U.S. Marine Corps. Japan, a critical U.S. ally in the Western Pacific, is improving its navy, but not enough to deter a rising China. Germany's own defense minister has said its military is likely unable to defend the country. Over the 10 years that Heritage has assessed the condition of America's military, the story has been the same. Neglect, delay, underfunding, and excuse-making. Annual budgets are always delivered late, and budgets have always fallen short of inflation. Equipment isn't maintained or replaced. Critical training for our men and women in uniform is sacrificed. More attention seems to be given to social justice initiatives than to combat readiness.
We've got a Pentagon running around worried about renaming bases and putting Chinese-made solar panels on microgrids rather than focusing on lethality, on training, and having the very best of the best to deal with the threats that we're facing.
Washington, D.C.'s priorities are out of step with the needs of a nation, and history is not kind to countries that fail to protect their interests. America has done it before, but we've forgotten what it takes.
The United States has to get its act together at home. We also have to get our act together as it relates to being strong internationally. Those two things go hand in hand.
America's future depends on what we're willing to shape, promote, and protect. At present, our government doesn't seem to care enough to make the case for a military our country desperately needs. A peaceful world is possible, but only if we're willing to take on the mission. To find out more, check out the 2024 Index of U.S. Military Strength at heritage.org/military.